I'm sure many of you have seen the Candace Owens video that was broadcast all over Facebook a few days ago, where she spoke about George Floyd and the death and all that, and it had like some ungodly amount of views and shares. Now, I've done videos in the past on Candace Owens and how I feel about her. She's a terrible human being. She's a grade A grifter. She's great at it. She's just an absolute cancer on our public discourse. And she actually does a good job of smuggling in some small kernels of truth to when she talks or writes things, and that's what makes her so great at doing what she does, because there are some little nuggets of truth tucked right in there, and it makes it resonate with people more. But if you follow her enough, or you've just seen her interact with other people, you'll see that she's just an awful human being. So let's just take a few points from her video. I'm not going to show the video here or go through it. Just a few points. She basically does the whole, George Floyd was no angel routine. He was a criminal, a career criminal, and, he doesn't have good character, which, may be true. Those are the kernels of truth stuck, right in there. And he did commit some crimes in his past, and he probably doesn't have good moral judgment or good moral character. But none of his past transgressions gives Chauvin the right to be judge, jury, and executioner in the street. And that is what people are up in arms about. And she goes on to say that, the people are making, they're like applauding and celebrating George Floyd's life, and they're upholding a criminal, the black community. I haven't really seen that much. I'm not sure that that's what's going on. I think he's a martyr because it's a symbol of the cops again murdering someone in the streets, and particularly this time a black man. Now, I'm sure you can find little pockets and little people here, of course, that are going to celebrate him as a person, and he probably doesn't deserve the celebration as a person. But that's not what we're discussing here. And that's what Candace wants to obfuscate and deflect to, because the real situation at hand is that Chauvin murdered him. She also tucks in some statistics there in her video about the murder rate and the population of blacks and whites and blah, blah. And those statistics are accurate. Again, she throws in, real statistics in there. She kind of uses them in a way where she compares 6%, there's 6% black men in the country. And then she compares that 6% of black men, but then she compares it to the entire population of white people, including females, which is obviously disingenuous and a way to make the numbers even more skewed in her favor. So she does that as well. Then that brings me to the side of certain areas where things that she says, are accurate. If we're gonna fix this issue, we need to be able to talk about everything around it, right? The police brutality, police reform, police unions, the fact that many police are judge, jury, and executioner. And she brings up, the high violent crime rate of black men or the black community. And again, while those statistics are accurate, rational people, people in good faith aren't disputing the statistics. They're disputing why that happens. So why does that take place? What she's trying to paint, the picture that she is painting towards you would lead to believe that black people are just inherently more violent. But there's no evidence of that. There are so many other underlying factors that would and do cause people in these situations to commit crimes, and particularly violent crimes. You have the war on drugs for one. A lot of these acts of violence are gang and drug related. Is that good? No, obviously not. But is the war on drugs a stain on this country, and does it perpetuate that type of behavior? Sure, it does. I mean, why is marijuana a Schedule I drug? I mean, then you have certain practices that were placed or were still in place or were in the past that make it a little more difficult for people, whether they're just socioeconomically disadvantaged or they're black, to get ahead. So you have things like redlining. We have studies where, if the name on an application is perceived to be a black name as opposed to like a generic white name, perhaps that application isn't bothered to be looked at. And then you also have to take into account the other side. You do have to take into account some personal responsibility, right? Some personal responsibility to do better. If you're in a bad economic position and you're born into poverty, it's tough. But someone somewhere along the line has to break that perpetual chain of not doing better, of not achieving better, of not, committing criminal acts. And we as a society have to do better to help those people by removing barriers that make it easier for them, by helping them out with certain policies, by helping them out individually, by just being there for them and being, in a better position to help them. You have things like single parent households in the black community, which are higher than in other communities, which is definitely an issue. Now, we can talk about why there are more single parent households. There are a multitude of reasons why, for sure, and we need to know those reasons why and then tackle them one by one, but that's an issue for sure. And that is also an issue that really needs to be addressed by the individuals. There are obviously, like, the war on drugs and locking up men for, petty drug crimes is going to lead to that for sure. But there are other personal decisions that need to be better made. And then she goes on about culture as well. She goes on about black culture and talking about how, this culture lends itself to be more violent or more disruptive to society. But that doesn't really jive and make sense, because who are some of the biggest producers and, people who actually disseminate one of the biggest components of black culture, which is hip hop or rap music? A lot of this is white people at, big record companies. And then who is actually the largest consumer of that music and that culture? It's again, white people. And, they're not, according to the statistics, committing the violent crime that would be proportionate to listening to that type of music and taking it in as like reality. So you can't tell me that it works. It's more impressionable and works for black people, but it doesn't. It's not as impressionable and doesn't work for white people. And then another aspect where you definitely have to put some personal responsibility on and the onus on is education in general. I mean, one of the reasons why, Asian Americans do very well in this country in terms of income and prosperity, Jewish Americans as well. One of the reasons that is is because they value education so much, and they put such a strong emphasis on educating yourself, and it's in their culture. It's valued so much that it helps them prosper. Now, this is something we definitely all need to do better of, but it's definitely something that is a missing component from the Black community. Education needs to be valued more. It needs to be put a more emphasis on. It's seen as, you can see it within the dropout rates of different communities. It's a problem for sure. And, anyone who discusses these topics are radioactive. And when you touch them, you can be deemed a racist for saying the wrong thing, or, you can be deemed an Uncle Tom, and, you can lose your livelihood. So it's understandable why people don't want to touch them. But we need to talk about them. And everyone of all skin color needs to be able to discuss them honestly and openly. But you shouldn't be getting it from Candace Owens, because she doesn't discuss anything honestly. Anything. Anyone who wants to talk about these topics and has like an all-encompassing solution, or they're just touching on one side of the issue, whether it's police brutality, or whether it's the Black community or the white community, or white supremacy, or past transgressions of people. If they're only talking about one or two of those subjects, whatever they're prescribing is bound to fall short. It's not enough. It all needs to be talked about. These are very deep issues. And when you have someone like Candace Owens who comes out there, who again doesn't discuss anything honestly. This woman, she insults a 16-year-old girl in Greta Thunberg. She thinks climate change is a hoax. She traffics in COVID conspiracy theories. She's just awful in every way and intentionally misleads people. So getting your prescription for this problem from her is not going to work out well.